Before we start, please don't forget to like and subscribe. It was the kind of rooftop where the cocktails were smoked, the laughter brittle, and every third person had just closed a Series A. I stood by the glass railing, a tumbler of ginger soda in hand, as Claire, my wife, sharp as ever in a blood-red cocktail dress, raised her voice just loud enough to ride the music. "You guys," she chuckled, waving a hand toward me. "Jeremy's building a platform to save education. As in, he wants to replace teachers with YouTube lectures and AI tutors. He calls it a movement. I call it a national embarrassment." The laughter that followed wasn't loud, but it was sharp, and it cut. Even Malik, my oldest friend, winced and glanced my way. I turned toward her, slow and calm. The fog of the bay rolled just past the railings, the skyline gleaming behind her like a silent jury. I held her gaze. That's one way to put it. But let me tell you what I actually do. Claire crossed her arms, wine glass tilting lazily in her hand. "By all means, enlighten us. I'm building a system that gives high-quality education to kids who can't afford private schools or expensive tutors. Not to replace teachers, God no. To support them. To scale good teaching to places it never reaches. You laugh now, but in 5 years, this will be normal. And you'll remember I said that." No one laughed. A quiet settled over the group like a gust of cold air. Even the guy from Andreessen Horowitz stopped mid-sip. Malik leaned in. "That's actually kind of brilliant." Claire's smirk faltered. I took a breath and continued, voice calm but firm. "My company just got invited to pilot in 3 public schools. And next week, I'm presenting to a statewide board in Sacramento. The same week you booked a wine retreat, by the way." Claire's cheeks flushed. Someone murmured, "Wait, you're in schools already?" "I am," I said simply. "It's small, it's rough, but it's working." Another woman in a crisp navy pantsuit nodded slowly. That's not what Claire made it sound like. Claire's grip tightened around her glass, but her smile didn't return. The laughter was gone, and in its place, curiosity, maybe even admiration. I looked at her once more. I'm not ashamed of what I do. I believe in it. Then I turned back to the railing, letting the silence do what it does best, stretch. And for the first time in months, I felt her embarrassment hit harder than mine. Because the room? It had shifted. That night, our apartment felt like a showroom for someone else's life. White walls, glass table, silent corners. The kind of place where sound echoes too easily when you're the only one talking. I stood near the kitchen island, still in my blazer from the party, a takeout box sweating beside my laptop. Claire was sprawled on the sectional, silk robe draped like a trophy, one bare foot hooked over the edge of the couch, red polish catching the light. She didn't look at me as I talked, just sipped her wine and scrolled. "Claire, just listen for a second." Her eyes didn't lift. "Jeremy, I heard you already, tonight, and at every dinner for the last 6 months. You're still doing the online school thing." "Noted." I took a breath, kept my voice steady. "It's not just that anymore. We're getting traction. That pilot in Marin, the one I mentioned, the engagement numbers blew past projections. And tomorrow I've got a Zoom with Edison Growth Fund. They want a second-round discussion. They're already using words like valuation trigger." Finally, she looked up, but not the way I hoped. "Sweetheart," she said, drawing out the word like it had splinters. "Those people would say anything to keep you chasing. That's what they do. They dangle hope and sell vapor." I ignored the sting and opened my laptop, tilting it toward her. "Here, just look at this chart. These are real users. Teachers. Kids logging in, staying on longer than anyone expected. It's starting." She blinked once, then twice, and went back to her phone. I pushed forward. I ran a new forecast model. If the Series A closes, even conservatively, we're looking at maybe 5-6 million by Q2 next year. That's not a dream anymore. It's a path. I need you to see that." "See what?" she muttered. "Your stockpile of imaginary revenue." I exhaled through my nose, trying not to let it rise in my voice. "Claire, this is a real company. I'm working 18-hour days and sleeping on Slack," she cut in. "Jeremy, come on. You're not building Apple. You're running on fumes and wishful thinking." I stepped closer, voice quieter now. "This isn't a phase, Claire. It's the most important thing I've ever tried to do. We're at a hinge point. If I can just get through this month." She lifted the remote and turned the volume up. A sitcom laugh track spilled into the space between us. I stood there, still holding my laptop like it might bridge the silence. Can you please just pretend this matters to you for 5 minutes? Claire finally turned to me fully, one eyebrow raised. You want me to pretend? Jeremy, I've been pretending for a year. You think I want to sit here night after night hearing about bandwidth issues and edtech evangelism while my friends are flying to Aspen or booking chefs for their launch parties? I opened my mouth, but she wasn't done. I didn't sign up to be the wife of a guy chasing some noble failure. You had offers, safe jobs, real jobs, and instead, you're babysitting servers and pitching to angel investors with beard oil and student debt. She turned back to the TV, took another long sip of her wine. The glow from the screen flickered across her face, sharp and cold. I set the laptop down gently on the counter and walked to the window. The city stretched below us, so full of ambition and glow, and I was somewhere between both. I don't need you to be excited, I said finally. I just need you not to root against me. Her only answer was a quiet laugh. I'm not rooting against you, she said. I'm just waiting for reality to catch up. The room went quiet again, except for the distant applause of some talk show I couldn't name. And in that silence, I realized something I'd been afraid to name aloud. It wasn't that Claire didn't understand what I was building. It was that she didn't want to. 3 days later, the sound of paper hitting marble was louder than it should have been. I was at the kitchen island, stirring burnt oat milk into reheated coffee, when Claire walked in, heels sharp against the hardwood. No good morning, no glance in my direction. Just a perfectly folded packet dropped between us with all the grace of a mic drop. She didn't bother with dramatics. Her voice was smooth, efficient. I spoke to Lila's lawyer. Everything's in here. I stared at the papers, blinking once. Divorce? I asked, like I needed confirmation. She didn't flinch. It's all standard. We don't have kids. No messy assets. You keep your little company. I keep the apartment. The Teslas. The paintings. We split the stocks. Stocks? I muttered, reaching for the pages. You mean the shares you never looked at until I mentioned they might be worth something? Her smile didn't reach her eyes. Don't worry, Jeremy. I'm not trying to take your code base or whatever. Just what's mine. I glanced down at the thick printout. Legal language. Empty lines. One clean signature already scrawled at the bottom. Claire Renner. I didn't know we were at the paperwork stage, I said. You didn't notice a thing for the last 6 months, she replied. Why start now? I looked up at her. She was already pulling on her blazer, tailored, cream-colored, the kind that said, I'm fine, louder than her tone ever could. You're really doing this, I said. It wasn't a question. She nodded once, then reached for her purse on the stool beside her. I want out, Jeremy. I'm tired of watching you chase a fantasy. I'm tired of feeling second to your server logs. I want a life that exists, not one that's in beta forever. I picked up the divorce packet and turned a few pages slowly, half reading, half stalling. Someday, I said quietly, you're going to want back in. And not just to this marriage. To the life you're walking out on. She snorted. That's rich. Delusional, even. You seriously think this thing you're building is going to change anything? I looked at her, really looked. Beneath the polished armor was something brittle. Not regret, not yet. But something trembling under all that certainty. Yes, I said simply. And deep down, I think you know it too. She rolled her eyes, slinging the purse strap over her shoulder like a final insult. I don't have time for your TED Talk, Jeremy. I'm done being the supportive spouse to a man with nothing to show but broken routers and motivational quotes. Then she paused at the door, hand on the handle, eyes still dry but colder than I'd ever seen. I'm going to find someone who actually has something, who's already arrived. Not one of your little vision guys with a dream and a bunk bed. I smiled. Not out of pride. Not bitterness. Just clarity. Claire, I said calmly. You just gave up the only lottery ticket you'll ever hold. And when the numbers hit, don't come knocking. She laughed once, a short, sharp breath through her nose, and opened the door. The click of her heels faded down the hallway, then nothing. Silence. I stood alone in the center of our sleek, soulless kitchen, staring at the divorce packet. Then I folded it in half, neatly, and slid it under a stack of unpaid invoices. The first sound I heard after she left wasn't music. It was the low hum of my server rack kicking back to life from a reboot I'd started earlier that morning. I turned to my laptop, opened the IDE, and dove in. Claire was gone. But the mission? The mission was just getting started. The courtroom didn't smell like justice. It smelled like lemon disinfectant and cheap carpet glue. I sat at the long wooden table, alone. No lawyer. Couldn't afford one, not really. Across from me, Claire looked every bit the victor in waiting. Neatly pressed cream blazer, glossy nails, hair tucked behind one ear like she had an awards ceremony after this. Her lawyer did most of the talking. Silver-haired, overconfident, and chewing through his hourly billing like a wood chipper. "My client is seeking full rights to the primary residence," he announced, sliding copies across to the judge, "as well as both vehicles, per prior shared use and registration. My client has no interest in equity from the defendant's startup, which, by his own admission, has no consistent revenue." Claire didn't look at me. She stared straight ahead, ankles crossed, a faint trace of satisfaction curling at the edges of her lips. The judge, a man who looked like he ate tuna from the can and slept in his office, peered over his glasses. "Mr. Kerr, do you contest any of these claims?" I sat up slightly, adjusting the too-tight collar of the thrifted blazer I'd worn for the occasion. "No, Your Honor. I'm not here to fight over the apartment or the cars. I just want full retention of my company shares. 100%. Claire's lawyer smirked. "He's welcome to them, Your Honor. They're non-liquid and currently valued at 0. I said nothing, just nodded. The judge looked between us, clearly unimpressed. "All right then. If that's agreed upon, we'll proceed with the division as requested." 30 minutes later, it was over. Claire stood near the double doors of the courtroom, already pulling out her phone like she was ordering lunch. She tilted her face for the camera, angled the light just right, and snapped a boomerang of her glass of courthouse champagne. The caption went up before the cork hit the floor. "Fresh starts and smart exits, nail polish clinking glasses, #unbothered." I stepped past her on the way out, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel wrong. I just felt free. She caught my eye, a brief flicker. "Try not to break the internet with your coding wizardry," she said dryly. I gave her a calm smile. "You'll be the first to hear when I do." She rolled her eyes and turned back to her phone. Outside, I walked into the sting of the afternoon wind. My messenger bag thumped against my side with every step. Inside it, the only thing of value I had left: my laptop, 2 protein bars, and a flash drive. I paused at the corner and looked back up at the tall glass building we'd just walked out of. The judge had given her everything she wanted, on paper, but I knew the truth. She'd walked away from the only asset that hadn't finished becoming. She'd taken the furniture. I kept the foundation. And in a city like San Francisco, that's everything. Funny thing was, the judge had glanced at me on the way out. Not with pity, with curiosity, like he was trying to figure out why the guy who'd just lost everything was smiling like he'd won the long game. The office wasn't designed to be lived in, but I made it work. There was no bed, just a sunken futon wedged between a whiteboard and a wall of dying plants. The kitchen was a microwave, a hot plate, and a dented kettle. I showered at the 24-hour gym 2 blocks down and shaved with cold water and cheap razors in the shared restroom. And still, I'd never felt more focused. The hum of the fluorescent lights became my lullaby. The clicking keys of my mechanical keyboard were the soundtrack to my rebuilding. I lost 2 more investors the first week after the divorce. One emailed me at 2:37 a.m. with a painfully polite subject line, "Shifting priorities." The other didn't even bother, just had their assistant leave a voicemail. My server bill nearly doubled the second we scaled up to new test schools. Then our backend collapsed under a load I hadn't prepared for. But I didn't panic. I pulled 3 all-nighters in a row, learning from every crash. I refactored the code until the API was leaner than it had ever been. I didn't eat much, mostly ramen and apples. I drank too much coffee. I missed days, not just hours. But the first message that came through the contact form on our beta site stopped me cold. "I'm a teacher in East Oakland. Your platform just made my worst period of the day feel like the best. My students are finally talking about the material. Thank you." I read it 3 times. Then I got another. This one from a school in Idaho. Then Phoenix. Then New Orleans. I stopped checking the analytics dashboard every 10 minutes because it was too distracting and started checking it once a day instead because it was finally worth something. We crossed 10,000 users in 6 weeks. Then 100,000. Then something happened that had nothing to do with me. A TikTok teacher with 3 million followers made a video about our platform. She used it in her classroom. Said it felt like Gen Z finally had a syllabus they didn't hate. By the next morning, our servers were crawling. I scaled up using cloud credits I'd forgotten I even had. Scrambled to deploy load balancers. Barely slept for 48 hours. When I opened Twitter, X, I saw our name trending under #FutureOfLearning. I had no marketing budget, no PR team, no design consultant, just a platform held together with faith, duct tape, and a few thousand lines of rewritten code. But the world was watching. And by the end of that month, we hit 1 million users. The number didn't feel real until Malik called me. "You seeing this?" he said, laughter already bubbling in his voice. "You're everywhere, man. Even my boss forwarded me your platform today, and he still thinks PDFs are the height of innovation." I laughed, leaning back in my chair, the futon behind me stacked with clean clothes I hadn't folded. "Did he like it?" I asked. "He didn't just like it. He's pitching it at a board meeting next week. Says it's the only tool that didn't bore his kids to death during remote learning." I looked around my little office, the cold concrete floor, the empty coffee cups, the sticky notes covering the window. This was where everything had come undone. And somehow, it's where everything started to build back. Malik's voice softened a bit. "You remember when Claire said this was a vanity project?" I let the silence stretch. "Yeah, I remember." "She's seeing all this? I'm sure someone sent her the links." He chuckled. "Man, she bet against the wrong dude." The floor-to-ceiling glass framed the bay like a moving painting, sunlight bouncing off the water, sailboats cutting quietly through the blue, and in the distance, the shimmer of the Golden Gate. This was my home now. Not a penthouse, not a palace, just clean lines, warm wood, open air. A place built for light. The kind of place people stop talking when they walk into. The housewarming was already in full swing. Laughter filled the high-ceilinged living room. Plates clinked. Jazz hummed softly from the speakers tucked in the corners. And there was wine, not the budget kind in bulk, but the kind I used to Google and window shop just to understand how rich people thought. The crowd wasn't massive. Maybe 30, 35 people. But they were the right ones. My lead developer was chatting with a district administrator near the kitchen island. A Stanford professor I used to cold email was laughing over sliders with my head of partnerships. And then came Malik. I heard his laugh before I saw him. Big, easy, real, like something that couldn't be rehearsed. He walked in wearing his usual bomber jacket, sunglasses still on inside like he hadn't noticed. Okay, he called out, pushing through the open sliding doors to the back deck. "I'm sorry, but who lives here now?" Because I don't remember my boy Jeremy living in a Bond villain's house. I turned from the outdoor bar, grinning as I handed him a drink. "It's just a house." He raised an eyebrow. "It's got a view, man. It's got aura." Then he pulled me into a quick hug and clapped me on the back twice. "You really did it," he said. "No punchline this time. Just truth. You really did it." I nodded, letting the moment land without brushing it off. "Yeah," I said. "I did." We stood there in the warm air, watching the city stretch out beneath us like a reward. He glanced around the yard, then leaned in slightly. "Remember that night on the roof? When Claire lit you up in front of everybody?" I let out a dry laugh. "How could I forget? And you just stood there. Didn't throw a fit. Didn't storm off. You just explained your vision. Like a monk in a lion's den." "I wasn't trying to win the argument," I said. "I was building something bigger than it." Malik took a slow sip of his drink. "Well, now the thing you built is feeding public schools and paying your mortgage." I called it the long game. Played right. Before I could answer, my head of content came over holding a tray of mini tacos. "Jeremy," she grinned, "the local news anchor from KPRC is asking if you'll do a quick video interview. She's just outside. Totally informal." I smiled. "Give me 5 minutes." She nodded and disappeared back into the crowd. Malik chuckled. "See? Media's circling. Pretty soon you'll be dropping buzzwords on TED stages and making everyone cry." I leaned against the rail. "I don't care about the stage. I care about who's watching." He raised his glass. "Then make him watch, brother." The breeze kicked up off the bay, cool and salt-tinged. Inside, people toasted. Outside, stories overlapped across the deck like old friends. This wasn't about proving anyone wrong anymore. It was about proving the right people right. Before we go on, tap subscribe to catch the next drops. I had just stepped off the deck to refill my drink when I saw her. Near the front entrance, half-shadowed by the large fiddle-leaf fig tree I'd impulsively bought 2 days ago. Claire. She stood there like someone trying to remember whether they'd taken the wrong exit. Her dress was elegant, but not showy, navy, mid-length, sleeveless. Understated in a way that didn't quite suit her usual flair. No loud lipstick. No dramatic jewelry. Just quiet effort. She clutched a small clutch bag like it was an anchor. I watched her scan the room. She didn't recognize half the faces here. The people who were here now were the ones who believed in things before they were headlines. She was looking for someone familiar, but all she found was the reflection of herself in the polished glass. Malik appeared beside me, sipping from his drink, eyes flicking in her direction. Well, he muttered. And here comes the ghost of Christmas bad decisions. I didn't answer right away. She finally saw me. Our eyes met. Her steps hesitated, just briefly, but then she squared her shoulders and walked toward me. The room didn't go quiet, but in my mind, every conversation muted for a second. Jeremy, she said softly, stopping just short of arm's length. Claire, I nodded. No smile. No coldness either. Just neutral air. You look, she started, then faltered. This place is beautiful. Thank you. A silence passed between us, but I didn't rush to fill it. She gestured vaguely around. I almost didn't come. I wasn't sure if. Glad you did, I said simply. Another pause. She searched my face for something, recognition, regret, maybe even softness. But what she found was something harder to define. She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, her fingers fidgeting. It's been a while. It has. Everything's taken off, she said, glancing around. You're everywhere now. People talk. I looked past her, at the guests gathered in pockets of laughter and conversation. The startup I once built on peanut butter sandwiches now humming with energy and life. They do, I agreed. She nodded slowly, clearly working up to something. But I wasn't going to let her control the rhythm this time. I took a half step back, lifting my drink slightly. Help yourself to anything. There's wine on the back patio, snacks near the kitchen, and Malik will make sure you don't get lost in tech talk. Her mouth opened, maybe to say thank you, maybe to catch a word I hadn't said. But I was already turning back toward Malik. He raised an eyebrow. Well handled, he whispered. I wasn't handling anything, I said. I was just living. We both looked back. Claire stood alone now, shifting awkwardly, her presence unnoticed by the newer guests, the laughter washing right past her. She looked around, realizing what I had known for a long time. This wasn't her circle anymore. She had left the story early, and now, the pages had moved on without her. It started the next morning. A buzz on my phone, her name lighting up the screen in soft gray. No call, just a message. Hey, I didn't get to really say anything last night. You look good. You seem different, stronger. Just wanted to say that. I didn't respond right away. I reread it twice, once as myself, once as the man I used to be when those words might have meant something. Then I typed, simply, thanks. Hope you enjoyed the evening. No period. No warmth. Just clean, neutral language. The next day, another message. Do you remember that trip to Big Sur? You drove that awful rental car through the rain like it was a Ferrari, and I made you pull over because I swore I saw a rainbow? I thought about that today. I don't know why. I stared at the words. I remembered that trip. I remembered everything about it, actually, but I wasn't sure if she did. Not the way I had. Back then, I'd memorized the way she laughed under overcast skies. I built my life around that laugh once. But the woman who left me couldn't have been that same person. Yeah, I remember. That was all I sent back. 3 hours later, another text came through. I've been thinking about how fast everything happened. I don't blame you for not wanting to talk, but I never expected it to feel like this. Like you were gone for real. I didn't respond to that one. Not out of spite. Out of discipline. That week, I launched version 3.2 of our platform. We onboarded a new school district in Utah and signed a licensing agreement that had taken 6 months to negotiate. We were suddenly in talks with an education startup in the EU about a partnership. I worked 12-hour days and slept like a man who had stopped clinging to ghosts. Meanwhile, Claire's texts kept coming. Can we get coffee sometime? Even just 10 minutes? No pressure. Just, I miss talking to you. You're probably busy. I get it. And then, are you seeing someone? That one I didn't answer. The shift in tone was gradual. From flirtation to memory, from memory to regret. Regret to discomfort. Discomfort to silence. Then, for days after her first message, I got this. I made a mistake. I see that now. Not because of the money, or the house, or even the company. I see it because I didn't believe in you. I didn't stay when you needed someone in your corner. I chose easy over real. I stared at the words for a long time. This wasn't the same woman who once laughed in front of our friends and called my work a national embarrassment. This was someone unraveling slowly, thread by thread. I replied hours later. I appreciate you saying that. Hope you're doing well. That was it. She didn't text the next day, but the one after that, a final message came in. I know you don't owe me anything, and I know we can't rewind the story, but if you ever wanted to talk, not about us, just as people, I'd be here. I didn't delete it. I didn't block her. I just left it there, sitting unread by choice, even though I had already read it 3 times. Because I wasn't angry anymore. And I wasn't tempted either. My past was trying to find a place in my present, but my present had no vacancies. Claire had made her exit. Now, she was knocking on a door I no longer lived behind. It was a Thursday night. Late. I'd just finished a call with our back-end team in Dublin when I heard the doorbell. Unusual hour. No one used the bell. Friends just texted or walked in. When I opened the door, I didn't expect her. Claire stood there under the soft porch light, her eyes red, her makeup worn down to salt-stained shadows. Her posture wasn't sharp anymore. Shoulders slightly slumped, arms crossed tight against herself. No performance. No curated entrance. Just Claire. "Hi," she said, her voice cracking. I didn't know where else to go. I opened the door a little wider, stepping aside. "You want to come in?" She hesitated. Just for a minute. She stepped inside slowly, her heels soft against the wood floor. I watched her glance around. At the clean lines, the warm lights, the quiet peace of the home she'd once assumed would never exist. She stood near the kitchen island, fingers brushing the counter like she needed something to hold on to. "I'm not here to talk about the house," she said. "Or your company. Or what you've done." Her voice trembled. "I've already said too much about all of that." I stayed silent. She looked up at me then. Really looked. Her eyes weren't pleading. Just open. Honest in a way I hadn't seen since before the wedding. Back when everything we talked about was dreams instead of deadlines. "I came because I misjudged you," she said. "Not just your ambition or your work. I misjudged who you are. I thought you were chasing something to prove yourself. But now I see you were building something because you believed it mattered." She exhaled, voice barely above a whisper. "And I didn't. I didn't believe in it. Or you. Not really." Her hands trembled slightly, and I let the wrong voices get into my head. I let the curated feeds, the group chats, the likes, the validation, all of it, replace my own judgment. I thought worth was tied to what people saw. But now, watching how you just kept going when nobody clapped, she paused, swallowing. That's real. That's the kind of worth I never understood until now. I leaned back against the counter, arms folded, listening. "I don't miss the money," she continued. "I don't miss the apartment or the champagne toasts. I miss who I was when I was proud of you. I miss the mornings you'd wake up early just to write ideas on napkins. The nights you'd talk about creating something good for the world instead of just cashing in on a trend. I didn't see it then. And I'm sorry." Tears streamed quietly now. No sobbing. Just a raw, unfiltered ache. "If there's a world where you'd even consider it," she said, "I would start over. Not because you've made it, but because I finally see what I was too blind to stand beside the first time." She looked down at the floor, then back up, blinking through the blur. "Rich or broke. Quiet or loud. I'd choose you now. The version I walked away from. I see him clearly now." The silence stretched. I let it. I studied her, not with anger, not with victory, but with careful distance. Then I said, quietly, "I'll think about it." Her eyes widened just slightly. She nodded slowly. No protest. No attempt to push. "Okay," she whispered. And for the first time all evening, she smiled, but not the polished kind. Just a soft, grateful curve. She turned toward the door. I didn't walk her out. I didn't need to. She let herself out into the night. No heels clacking, no parting line. Just the quiet echo of someone who had said everything they came to say. I stood in the stillness of my living room long after the door closed. I wasn't sure what I would decide. But I knew this. Whatever I chose, it wouldn't come from bitterness. Only clarity. The bay looked different in the morning. Still, gray. Like it, too, was waiting for a decision. I hadn't slept. Just sat in the armchair by the tall window with a blanket I never used, staring at the water while questions circled like gulls. She had come back. Humbled, not triumphant. Not asking for glitter or payback. Just asking for possibility. But the man she left wasn't the man answering the door anymore. By 10 a.m., I picked up my phone and scrolled to her name. I hesitated, then tapped call. She answered on the first ring. Jeremy. Her voice was soft, cautious, like she wasn't sure if she was dreaming. Hey, I said. You have a minute? Yes. Yes, of course. I stood by the window, one hand in my pocket, the other holding the phone lightly to my ear. I thought about what you said, I began. And I believe you meant it. I did, she replied instantly. But belief alone isn't enough, I said. Not this time. If we ever rebuild anything, friendship, trust, whatever it ends up being, it has to be on my terms now. I understand, she whispered. I need you to hear this, I continued, calmly. There's no more pretending. No performing for social media. No disappearing when things get hard. No measuring worth by attention or headlines. Okay. I won't play therapist to your doubts, and I won't play cheerleader to your fears. I've built something real. I'm not sacrificing it for comfort or familiarity. Her voice cracked, just slightly. I'm not asking you to. I know. I just need to say it. Out loud. She was quiet for a moment. Then, slowly, she said, so what now? I took a breath, looking out at the glint of sunlight finally cutting through the fog. We start small. Coffee. A walk. A conversation with no pressure to go backward. I don't know where it'll lead, but it'll be honest. There was a pause. Jeremy, she said, and her voice caught. Thank you. The way she said it, it wasn't desperate. It wasn't even relieved. It was sincere, gentle, human. She didn't ask for more. I heard her breath hitch, then quiet footsteps on what sounded like hardwood. I've been practicing being quiet, she said. Not in a sad way. Just learning to hear people again. Learning to sit with something and not try to win it. That's what I'll bring, if you'll let me. I let that hang for a moment, then said, that's a good place to start. She didn't respond right away, but when she did, it was just one soft phrase. I'm here. No expectations. I nodded, even though she couldn't see. Let's keep it that way. There was no rush to end the call. No cliffhanger. Just silence, the kind that wasn't sharp anymore. It just existed. After we hung up, I set the phone down, stepped outside onto the deck, and watched the wind ripple across the water. The balance had shifted. Not in my favor. Not in hers. Just shifted. 6 months slipped by without fanfare. No announcement. No status updates. No filtered photos to suggest we're back. Just mornings. The first time Claire brought over coffee without being asked, I noticed she didn't choose the most expensive brand. She didn't post about it either. Just handed it to me, still warm, and said, thought you'd need it before your call. We never moved back in officially. She didn't come with boxes or suitcases. She came with a folded sweater, a book under her arm, and a quiet willingness I'd never seen in her before. We started slow, on purpose. Evenings were filled with shared silence more than shared plans. We'd sit on the couch, feet barely touching, her reading something by Toni Morrison, me reviewing code or running user feedback reports. Some nights, we didn't talk much. And that was okay, because when we did talk, it meant something. Do you still think about who you were before all this? She asked one evening, her voice low as we watched fog drift across the bay. I nodded. All the time, but mostly to remember what not to forget. She smiled softly. I wish I'd met this version of you first. I didn't respond. I just reached for her hand. Not as a promise, just as presence. We didn't wear rings. Not because I was against the idea, just because it didn't matter now. She stopped chasing moments worth posting. She started noticing ones worth living. There was a quiet discipline in how she moved through my space. Our space, when she was there. She didn't take over. She didn't try to decorate or rearrange. She folded the blanket we both shared, wiped down the counter when I left coffee rings behind, asked questions about the new product updates, even when she didn't understand them. And never once, not once, did she ask about money. Not about the valuation, not about partnerships, not even when an article came out saying we were likely heading for an IPO. She was just present. One Saturday, I found her on the back deck, feet tucked under her, hair loose in the breeze. She was journaling. When I brought her tea, she looked up and said, I used to think ambition was loud. Now I think it's just consistent. I sat beside her, letting the silence speak first. She didn't fill it. She just leaned her head lightly against my shoulder. That was the day I realized something important. She wasn't trying to catch up to my life anymore. She was finally walking beside it. Not ahead, not behind, beside. No noise, no apologies, no conditions. Just the slow, steady rhythm of two people learning how to be, again. That was the end of my story. Claire once chose image over loyalty, applause over belief. But when it all fell away, she came back not to reclaim the spotlight, but to rebuild something real. So here's what I'm wondering. When she showed up at my door with no promises and no demands, just honesty, did she do the right thing? Or was it too little, too late? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if this story meant something to you, hit like, subscribe, and stick around. I've got more to tell.